There's something fundamentally quite wrong with our private rental sector at the moment, because yesterday I was out with to visit one of our houses that we're doing some work in, and I came across our neighbour next door. I've never met them before. I've had this house for about 15 years, and these guys have bought the house next door for about, they tell me, about 10 years or so. In that time, they've been kind of renting it. Well, they lived in it and then rented it for the last kind of 3 years. But sadly, I guess it's a story that, you know, on social media we don't really talk about as property investors. We don't talk about the bad and the hard part of investing and managing properties. Here, this couple, like I said, they'd owned it for a while, rented this. They moved somewhere else for their kids, rented this house to a tenant, and they'd come back to it and they were absolutely distraught. I could visibly see that they were really teary, they were really upset. So I took the time out to, you know, basically kind of introduce myself and just check in to make sure that they were okay. And then they basically recanted what had happened. Tenant moved in and within 2 or 3 months stopped paying. Then they got this whole COVID period challenge where they couldn't serve notice. So in that time, obviously the tenant were making the most, I guess I should say, out of this situation. So in the end, this lady and the husband was telling me that they are now owed £20,000 of rent. The tenant has not paid them for over 2 years. It's taken them everything they've had in both in the bank, but also strength-wise, emotionally. You could tell there was visible strain between the couple. That you know, the lady was saying, you know, I've had to do this quite a lot on my own. My husband didn't, you know, kind of buried his head in the sand, and you know, I felt really, honestly, I felt terrible for them, because he is somebody who are trying to kind of, you know, do the right thing for their families, protect this kind of asset that they have, rent it in good faith. They used agents, and guess what? The agent went missing, because the minute that, you know, estate agents are great like that, because they take your 1 month's rent plus that. So in this case, let's say it was, I don't know, 1,200 quid. So they would have taken 1,500 quid on the way in from the landlord. Then they will do a 10% per month management cost, all the while the tenant was paying. And the minute that they stop paying, okay, they don't get the 10%, but that's it. They almost say, well, you know, we're writing to them, they're not paying, you need to take them to court. So and it falls on the landlord for them to work out this system and try to understand how to follow the rules and evict and get possession. And clearly this tenant knew the rules much more than the landlord, and that's why they kept on delaying and pushing back and saying, oh, you've not served us the right notice, etc., etc. So in the end, I think, you know, after 2 years, 20 grand debt or loss of earnings, they've finally got the house yesterday, and they went in and they were crying because the condition of it. Quite frankly, for somebody like me, I didn't think it was that bad. But if that's been your home and then you rented it and then you come back, things are broken, things are not great, you are visibly upset. So I guess my advice here for anybody listening to this is make sure, especially now with the upcoming legislations that are coming, and I'll talk to you about what these are soon. But make sure that, you know, when you are renting right now, you've got to really get your ducks in a row and be very clear about the rules. You've got to get an assured short hold tenancy in place. You've got to protect the tenant's deposit within 2 months of them moving in. You've got to ensure that you serve them the how to rent guide. You can download that on the .gov.uk for the latest edition. You've also got to, you know, we do that, you know, as a standard procedure. We have a declaration form to say we have given them the GASA, the EPC, the how to rent guide, and ASD, and also when we send them the deposit protection certificate, we then get them to sign for that as well. All of that has to now be so regimentally documented, because if you don't do that and you need to rely on right now the section 21 as a route to evict the tenant when the expiry of the tenancy happens, you will need to satisfy all of these criteria and these notices and these information was given to the tenant before they moved in. So if you don't do that, you can't rely on the Section 21 notice at the moment, and you have to then rely on Section 8. Now, all of these things, the lady was telling me she didn't know anything about these things, and she found it really hard to find the information until she kind of asked around and took ages, got it wrong first few times, and it cost her money, cost her time, cost her court fees, loss of rents and everything else. So the key here is to make sure that, if you are in this game or you're getting into property investment, you're really need to get to know your rules around rental and tenancy management and tenancy rights. Second thing is, it's going to get worse, I'm afraid, because not only is it that we are now, there's a proposal in the statute at the moment that is being consulted upon by the government, which is looking to really offset the balance now and really put the favor in the tenant's court. So what I mean by that is, look, I've been this for 23 years. My longest serving tenant for 18 years with us. So I'm all for long-term tenants. If the tenants are the right tenants, they pay, you don't have a problem, etc., etc. So no professional landlord want a tenant and then kick them out for no reason. That just doesn't happen. And I think the idea that no fault eviction is somehow landlord just do it for the sake of it is absolute nonsense, because whenever somebody leaves, we've got to then redo the property. We've got to then probably take another 2-3 weeks, a month to re-rent the place depending on where it is. So nobody wants that discontinuity of business. So it's absolute nonsense to say that landlords are always using no fault eviction for willy-nilly. But the new legislation that's coming through, if that does come through in its shape and form at the moment, and I've also been consulting on behalf of the NRLA as well and feeding in feedback to NRLA on behalf of landlords. But as it stands, they are going to scrap Section 21, so you're not going to be able to serve Section 21, which is at the end of a tenancy agreement. You say, okay, I'm not going to renew your tenancy, you have to leave. That's going to go, and that means that the tenant will, after the 12-month, 6 months contract, they'll go into something called a periodic contract, which is almost non-ending, unless and until 3 of these proposals that they're proposing happens. Either they don't pay, so then you follow a Section 8 rule, which means that after 2 months of non-payment, they are thinking about delaying that even more. You can then go to court, pay more fees, pay more costs, lose more rents. On average, I think it's about 4 months by the time you get your property back. That's rule number 1 that will probably stay. Hopefully they'll tighten that rule if they do go down that road of scrapping Section 21. The second one is antisocial behavior. If the tenant and you can prove, now that's the key here. How hard is it going to be for us to prove antisocial behavior? Because it's not going to be a one-time event. They're going to want to have lots and lots of evidence and lots of time. So is a landlord now, if you're a remote landlord, and we're not, but I know a lot of people are remote landlords. Are you going to be traveling up 4 hours to then set camp and see this antisocial behavior, to video it, are you going to be allowed to do that? So there's going to be a lot of hassle around this antisocial behavior, which is the ground number 2 that they'll let you take possession of your own property. And the third and last one is either you're selling the house or you're moving into the house, or your family's going to move into the house. Those will be the only 3 reasons: non-payment, antisocial behavior, moving in, or your family's moving in, or you're selling the place itself. Those will be the only grounds for possession going forward if the new, what they call a fairer rental sector proposal go through next year. I just thought I'll put this out there because, landlords get a really bad rep all the time, or people think it's really easy. You buy a house, put a tenant in, and that's it. You start buying your Ferrari and you start driving around. There's a heck of a lot more to know. It's a business. We run a business. We've got regulations. We've got rules. We've got tenancy. We've got management. There's a heck of a lot more. So if you are going to get into this, or if you are staying in it, please read the rules. Really get au fait with how to protect yourself and your business when it comes to renting to tenants at the moment.